It's Friday the 13th. Shawn Gumataotao of the That's It, That's All podcast joins us this morning. Hi, Shawn.
Hey, good morning there, Chris, and good morning to all your listeners out there, and Jason, and I know Sabrina's listening somewhere. Good morning to you guys.
My friend, so you just came back from Hawaii. We wanted to bring you on to kind of do a little sit rep on what's going on there in Hawaii. We've obviously there's been a lot of news reports about their re-implementing of restrictions, but it looks like they're doing a lot worse than we are.
Right, Chris. It was maybe midday on Tuesday. I was with almost the entire regional emergency management infrastructure, and the governor's office in the middle of the day declared put the kibbutz on social gatherings and the like, because cases were spiking in the state of Hawaii. I think at last count, just today, 549 new cases. They were averaging just over almost 600 over the last week. And so in an effort to try to get these cases under control, and these are unvaccinated, my understanding. A couple might have a couple of people who were vaccinated sneaking in, but primarily unvaccinated residents in the state of Hawaii. Chris, when I was listening to the news over in Hawaii, they had basically only were able to get only an additional 1% of their population vaccinated in 1 week. So it's really slow going, and obviously having to make a hard decision. The governor there had to really step in and kind of stop it. And this was in the middle of, I was down in Waikiki at a couple of different times, and it was just packed with people. So it's just timing, how do you limit these groups when there's events that have been planned, these large-scale events. The businesses all across the islands are just saying, well, I got to finish what I can before they come in and start closing us down.
Shawn, what's the sentiment, though, Zori, on the ground in Hawaii with the general population? From what you could gather, are they? I don't want to say anyone's welcoming the restrictions, but what's their COVID sentiment there in Hawaii?
Well, it appears that most people, especially the businesses, are absolutely thrilled, because most of those guys and gals got vaccinated, and then they decided to lean forward in an effort to kind of get, to keep their livelihoods alive. The general population of Hawaii, at least in talking to some of the locals, I think they too are a bit concerned about the amount of tourists coming in, but just as they're able to make sure that hospitals aren't overrun. That's one of the reasons why, Chris, additionally, why the governor decided to make the push was hospitals in Maui and in Kauai are overwhelmed, and on Hilo, the hospitals are now getting overwhelmed. So if you don't try to, stop, these larger functions, it's where they're finding is in large functions, then the healthcare system is going to be totally stressed out, right, and cases could go south.
We're not at that point yet, though, here, because our hospitalizations continue to remain low.
Right. And I think that as we're watching what's happening here, and I think Dr. Lombard mentioned it a bit earlier. I mean, you're seeing states across the country, as they've reopened, are starting to see more and more cases, primarily of unvaccinated folks. So I guess we can come on the air right now, and there's clusters, believe it or not, here that still, even though we're at that herd immunity per se, there's still people out there that haven't been vaccinated. And I would encourage all your listeners out there, if they haven't done so, get vaccinated. I think we have kids going back to school. My kids are all back to school now, and most of them are vaccinated, and then there's some that aren't because they just can't. Yeah. And so we want to definitely encourage our community. They haven't done so. Get that shot now.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jason Solis.
Yeah. Hey, Shawn. Good morning, man. Good to see you.
I
wanted to ask you something because of obviously you've worked in the media with us here, and then you went on to work on the other side of the microphone, as they say, and now as a teacher of communications theory at the university. And I like how you kind of dovetailed into that right at the end, because kind of the problem, we've talked about this internally here, is the unvaccinated reaching them and marshaling that message to them is the problem right now as it stands, right? Because the people that aren't vaccinated, they don't watch this show. and they're not going to watch this show because of, attitudinal reasons or politics or what have you, right? And in some cases, they can't watch this show because of economic reasons, right? So we're trying to have these conversations with these secondary markets, and over here, we got really smart viewers, and we're reaching those people. But how would you say, as someone who teaches effective communications and everything, how do you actually break through and reach the people that the message is not getting to? Because we're kind of preaching to the choir here.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that when we think of let's go back to even listeners, right, is getting the message out. Because I know that the multimedia platforms of KWM can reach so far, but it's incumbent on our community, especially those who work directly with those underserved communities. We cannot forget them. We see them during storms. Why wouldn't we see them in the heart, or at least in the tail end of a pandemic? So getting the mayor's offices involved, and they might want to retool their focus. They are just doing regular service. They are doing these All Rise Act verifications for most things. But it's important for them to help kind of direct public health to where we might be able to find those. And it really just takes time and just a reprioritization. It's like almost they're back to normal operations, but we need to have a more concerted effort to go back into the villages at specific areas, right? Going into the heart of, whether it's Nevermind Road in Dedido, whether it's in Atdas somewhere in Jigo, in these other areas, we need to go into these places with some help and just ask, hey, have you gotten the shot? And maybe we need to start using the one-shot Johnson & Johnson vaccination. And going in there, just like we did with some of the homeless population, we need to get maybe a mobile team. I think there is one, right, Chris?
There is, yeah.
We got to get them out there and just keep pushing as hard as we can to get the vaccinations out.
They have that 311 option 8 for back to school hotline. They should also, and you guys can call public health anytime. I'm sure they'd love to talk to you about vaccination, but there should be that, because just anecdotally, we had Dr. Lombard on, and he was talking about a 70-year-old patient who was not vaccinated, and who was asking him, like, why. He didn't really have a good reason. So, Doc talked to him, and then at the end of the conversation, I guess he was like, okay, I guess I'll go get a shot. I feel like there are a lot of people like that who maybe just like want to ask some questions. So maybe like option, vax or whatever for 311 for those people because you're right. When I talk to people who aren't vaccinated, sometimes they just hear something that, is easily disputed, and that's that, But then there are those people who are not going to change their attitude on it.
Yeah, I think, but like I said earlier, I think it's that we need to just, and it's nothing harder than just asking and going to these areas and just asking a simple question. But we need the help of our village mayors, village organizations, church groups, and the like. And it's not a hard ask. We just have to be able to go into these pockets, and we have to bring it. We just got to be as proactive as we can. Right now, as you know, the public health centers are all open and giving free vaccinations anyways. But we just got to go a little bit deeper. Do we need to go into the Ija subdivision in Inarohan, right, Chris? Or do we go all the way down to the Umatic subdivisions and start looking for people and asking, have you been vaccinated? And ask them, if they'll do it, and then right on the spot. But we got to maybe utilize GURA. Maybe it isn't low income. Maybe it is just those. It might be. We don't even know. It seems like everywhere we go, people, when you're at 80%, now you're in that final stretch. Just for information, the Republic of Palau is the only place in the Western Pacific that has almost nearly 100% vaccinations.
That's
and
right.
And their messaging was very clear: get vaccinated. How hard is that for their community to take?
No, I don't know if
Wait, what was it again, Sean?
Get vaccinated.
What? Two words? Are you kidding?
Yeah, I don't know if you caught Sean the other day. We had the president of the Guam Federation of Teachers Union, Tim Fedenko, on, and he said, it kind of blows his mind. And he goes, if you look back, and then Tim is a student of history, and he goes, back when we had, the polio scare, he goes, everybody just got it because we didn't have the internet, we didn't have this outrage culture. It wasn't, like cool to, to revolt against conventional wisdom and everything like that, or like, oh, I want to be iconoclast, so I'm not gonna get it. We didn't have these conspiracy theories about Bill Gates, at one point the richest man in the world, and the co-founder and CEO of what was one time the most powerful corporation. putting freaking nanochips into our
Not
arms.
the Bill Gates thing, Jay.
Yeah.
Come
So
on.
there's that.
This is a respectable program.
Yeah, no, yeah, of course. But we didn't have that, and we were able to eradicate polio. But my question to you now, Shawn, is because we know each other and we know what a family guy you are, there is also a problem of there may be children that want to get vaccinated and they see the benefit of doing it, but because they live in their parents' house, and if their parents say no, that's the end of that discussion, and that's not going to change. How did you as a parent approach that? Because we know you have several children. At least one of your daughters who are now, and your eldest daughters are grown women now. At least one of them works in healthcare. How did you have that conversation with your kids?
Well, I think for us, I mean, my youngest one just got her second dose when we came back from California, so now she's fully vaccinated. We wanted to make sure that when she went to Inarahan Middle School, that she was as well, not only say safe, but as prepared for what would be a very challenging year ahead. We want to have her go face to face because we've seen the struggles that online is given. She's okay, she's a good student, but as a parent, we have to do what we think is best. And I think I was reading in the newspapers and listening to some of the stories on KWM and others about people, being a little hesitant. And now when the school year started just a day ago, now everybody wants to go back to online, but they don't have a choice until January. But as a parent, I want to make sure that my kid's safe. I spend a lot of time reading about the vaccinations and the vaccines itself. I looked at other countries, like I think I told you guys on this show, the Israel studies have been very phenomenal in terms of how they have been rolling out and how they've been performing using the Pfizer vaccine as an example. But we just have to spend a little bit of time. But a lot of people don't have access to that information. So if you have friends and family listening to the show right now, all I can ask you is to tell them that it can help everyone. And we can't keep using superstars. We can't use social media influencers. We have to just say it now. Guys, go out and get vaccinated. As every person possibly can to listen to the show, it's important that we do so. And we can see what's happening in other communities. They're going backwards too. We need to go forward. And Chris, like you were, and Sabrina was saying earlier, I'm a little nervous about what the governor and her team might come up with today. And hopefully it's something that can help us all versus going backwards.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about messaging and communication, Shawn. As
Sure.
You talk about Palau's message, very simple: get vaccinated. It almost seems like we really struggle with information under this administration. It's either slow in coming or just I'm dumbfounded by the strategy or plan. It doesn't seem like there is a plan. I mean, they put out a video in the middle of the night, begging people to adhere to the basics. But when you put out a video on your Instagram, I mean, you got a couple thousand followers. I'm not sure it reaches anybody who needs to see those kind of things. So what do you make of just that kind of thing? Communications mess ups, like putting out a huge executive order mandating vaccination for executive branch employees, putting an order like that out via WhatsApp 30 minutes before the news. I mean, clearly messaging during this pandemic is so important, but why are we seeing it? I mean, to me, I feel like it's a complete mess and almost a utter failure.
Well, okay, we can go back to our first discussion before the predecessor to the link containing COVID, and we talked about realistic and reassuring messages. That, despite the pandemic, has to be the push in all public communications. If we as communicators are trying to get our word out, we want to make the whole community will believe us. They want us, we are credible because we're getting the best information from our professionals who are tasked and work every day at this. They're reflected of the first responder, right? The nurse, the doctor, the public health advisors, the nurses who were at the airport last night. The messaging reflects them. I was commenting last night when I came through, I had a piece of paper for the, what do you call that Guam Health, Health Declaration Form. I had a paper. I didn't even realize we had that available. And so I saw the line for the online, and there was nobody there. We're talking hundreds of people trying to get through. I'm sure we could all got through faster if we would have just had more notice about it. But that's it. It's realistic, reassuring. We're not out of the woods. we have to continue to push. It goes back to, again, we're at herd immunity, but we're still in peak core 3. Yeah. So what does that mean? That means that we still have a long way to go to give enough trust in government that we can reopen and take off all the chains that have kind of been binding us for over a year and change now.
Yeah, I'll just say, Shawn, that it almost seems to me like the governor's distracted, and that the messaging we do get, it comes along begrudgingly. We get into a press conference, we ask questions get hard, they call an end to the press conference. So to me, it kind of goes back to messaging, communications, and credibility. When you don't have messaging and communications that's believable, you don't have credibility, and that's what we have in this administration. I mean, I'm very sorry to say, but a lot of people feel like Adelup is just not credible.
Yeah, I come, and I've been in their shoes, and I completely understand what they may be trying to accomplish. But I think my whole point at that time, putting my old hat on, if we could be realistic and reassuring with the community and do our best to, then that's what we can only hope for, is that message can be taken and decisions can be made. So as long as you can get it out there and you're being consistent, I think that sometimes we have to remember that it's just not hard. I've been in those shoes, and if it keeps them up at night, great. But man, if realistic and reassuring is not too challenging, it's a basic function of public information is we have to get it out. We have to be realistic. Our community deserves to hear the information right away. I know the cycle, remember when we started, when I left the KOM, we weren't in any 24-hour news cycle. It was a 6 o'clock news and a 10 o'clock news. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it went to 24-hour news, then it went 6 to 6. Now we're at that 6 to 6 now, and everyone needs to know about it before they go to bed so they can make better decisions. So it's important we all remember that. And we think about I teach it at UOG. It's about agenda setting theory of who's going to set that agenda. Our friends that, like your KWM, they want to be able to share and look at the viewpoint of the listeners and viewers, and then working with government. There is the direction that they'll take the information, but it's up to people who are listening to you today to make that call on what they want to do with their life. Do they get up? Do they sleep? Whatever they do, we're all going to be dictated by the information that's given and how they choose it.
Yeah. I mean, it just seems to me like they struggle with getting like any kind of information out. Like with this, so the governor has her press conference. She announced that she's scrapping the RISE Act in favor of this All Rise program. And so we're all waiting for the executive order. Then we hear things like from Crystal Pagos and Augustine yesterday and asking, hey, is this EO going to come out? Because, the governor kind of announced it a few days ago, and it just really seems like, I don't know if the governor makes these decisions on a whim and then everyone has to kind of like lockstep. Oh my God, she said something is going to come out on EO. Now we got to go right to EO. I mean, I don't know what the problem is, but we were told yesterday that the All Rise EO would be out. We were told in the morning that Crystal was looking at a draft copy, but then we don't hear back about it. And to me, that's just basic like communication, especially with your media partners. You want to keep them in the loop. We don't want to feel like it's a bother to ask for information. And I feel like there's just no front-facing information coming out. There aren't talking heads, right? We receive, information that's crucial through WhatsApp without any supplementary opportunity to ask questions. And I think that's led to just a real communications breakdown.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, in my second life in government, using the judiciary, WhatsApp might have been helpful, but just our traditional means of communicating and keeping consistent to it is probably where I think all of the journalists are probably saying we just want it to be consistent. It's a lesson in that, and maybe as they look back, and it might have worked for this day and age, the Twitters of the world, the Instagrams, all that stuff. It might work, but bottom line is not every single resident has it, and I think we should come to that grips with that. But it's got to be realistic. It's got to be reassuring, whether or not you're on 10 platforms. But yes, Chris, you guys deserve to have that in front, so you can get out to the masses, hence mass communications and the use of these mediums to get the word out to our community.
Yeah. Well, Shawn, thanks for your time. Always insightful. Bree?
Sorry, I just
Hey, good
walked in.
morning,
I
Sabrina.
was covering the Nicholas Wayne Moore
Right.
arraignment hearing.
Okay. So you got something on that?
Yes, he pled not guilty to both cases, the drive-by shooting and the murder of Michael Castro.
Not guilty.
Right,
Right.
not
Okay.
guilty.
Okay. Well, there you go. Yeah, anything on what Shawn was saying? You good?
I'm sorry, I just walked in. I
Okay.
didn't get a chance to hear that
It
because I
was
was
good.
listening in
Don't
on the
worry.
court hearing.
Hey, miss a link, miss a lot, Bree.
But you stay safe out there in Hawaii.
Oh, he's
Oh
back.
no, I'm
Oh, you're
back
back?
home.
Yeah.
Oh, that was quick.
I came back last night. It was cut short as we know. Events of the day take over,
Right.
and so when you have the leadership of Region 9 FEMA in one place, guess what? The fire's called. So I'm home. I'm home now. So at least but it's very interesting what's happening in the state of Hawaii, and I think we all should watch it because it's very similar to what's happening here or could happen here. So we try not to lose sight of the fact that our friends just one island over are struggling with infections and the like too.
Yeah.
Shawn, there's a comment here that I think kind of sums up what, unfortunately, so unfortunate, what a lot of people think. Rosemary comments, and any questions to the governor puts her in a defensive stance at press conferences. And we've seen this triggering, if you will, of the governor. And I mean, we're talking off the break, a little thicker skin, right, and dealing with this at this level of leadership requires, you know, that you be able to withstand questions.
You know, Chris, my Uncle Joe San Augustine, defunto now, he told me when I first joined the governor's office, right after I left KOM, he said, boy, you need to have the skin like a carabao. If you do not have skin like a carabao, then you are going to be in for a very short career in public information. And it was one of the best pieces of advice that I ever got going into working in government. And it's true, because not everyone's going to like what you have to say, but if you are consistent, if you're real, if you are reassuring, at best, you know, people will listen and do their best to make a decision for themselves.
Correct. But instead, what we have is a situation. I mean, how do you have $600-some million in federal money and people out here are bitter and they're mad and they're angry and they're confused? It should be a slam dunk win-win for this administration.
Oh, but I mentioned in one of my episodes of the podcast talking about this is like tactically it is good for the governor of Guam.
Right.
I think about back to Felix's time with the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act money. Felix had control over all the ARA funds. I was helping him, and you can look online. You see my signature somewhere implementing money for Department of Education. So, and he had a bit of control. So the governor of Guam, in these cases, when it's appropriated by Congress for this reason for the executive branch to use, they have a lot more, I guess, more juice. I know the legislature gave their 2 cents. Thank you.
Yeah.
Their job is not that. Their job is to take the appropriations of the community, the general fund. That's their policy-making side. It is not to tell the governor, oh, it'd be great to get some interaction. You check the box. I think I read the Federal Register that, and it said get interaction, get some communication or get some input.
Yeah.
And they are. They have been. I mean, just whether or not they'll, at the end of the day, listen, it's kind of, you don't know. Right?
All right, Shawn.
So she is meeting that requirement. So she's there already.
There's a town hall today.
Oh, great. That was
it's public health.
great.
Though.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Take it easy, Shawn.
You guys have a great weekend.
Okay.
Nice talking to you guys
Right
as
on.
usual.
Yeah. You know what I mean, though? I mean, a governor's, God, I almost said some kind of dream, but any governor would dream of having this opportunity, which should be, I mean, done right or even just done at all. Proper communications and messaging in a situation like this where you have a governor who's sitting on an enormous